Hello, hello. Thank you guys all for coming. We truly appreciate it. Make sure everyone gets in here first. Awesome, awesome. Everybody's on camera. This is great. You guys see Lucas right here. He's a superstar. He's going to talk to us in 1 second. But thank you guys all for coming to our first student speaker series. And really what this is a chance for us to highlight some amazing students that we've had the chance to meet, talk to, and help them develop a short-term TED Talk. So I'll let Lucas jump into his briefly. By way of intro, I'm Darius. I'm the president here at TEDx ICU. And I'll be asking Lucas some questions after his talk. But yeah, thank you guys for coming. And I definitely want to just kick it off to Lucas and go ahead. Your show, man.
All right. So the story starts with a company called OpenAI. Now, OpenAI is a company that was founded by Elon Musk and a guy named Sam Altman. And their mission statement was to research artificial intelligence for the benefit of humanity. And they've done some really interesting stuff. If you check out their projects, they've done things as far as generating images, right? So you can see here, give it half of an image, and then it generates the other half. And it's pretty creative, the stuff it comes up with, right? They've also done generating music. I definitely go listen to some of it. It's really cool. Or they'll make environments that will set up AI to learn super complex tasks and other types of things. So this nonprofit caught my attention because of a specific technology, and it's called GPT. And so what GPT is this natural language processing model. And that sounds super complex. So I'm not going to bore you with the technicalities, but NLP, or natural language processing, is a field in AI with the ability of a computer to understand, analyze, manipulate, and potentially generate human language. So I got interested in this after I read a blog by OpenAI where they gave a demo of their second version, GPT-2. And basically they give the example input at the top where they set up this prompt, they call it prompt. And it's basically a story about how a group of scientists find some unicorns living in a remote valley. And then the computer just generates the rest of the story. And once I read that, I was blown away. I was like, oh, I need to get my hands on this. This is gonna be super fun to play with. It's gonna be hilarious. But then when I got to the bottom, they didn't release it, which normally they release everything they do. And they explained we're not gonna be releasing this due to concerns of people creating fake news. And so I waited and waited, and eventually they released it because they created a model that could detect when somebody was using their GPT model. So then they said, okay, well, now that we can detect it, it's ethical to release it, especially because somebody else is going to eventually create it. So why not create it now? So I enjoyed playing around with it so much that I signed up for their beta program. And then eventually in May 2020, I received an email to try the third version, GPT-3, right? And I didn't think much of it at first, but I jumped on it and I started to play around with it, and it was amazing, some of the stuff that I was able to do with it. And then I checked the internet and I saw that it was a private beta with only 2,000 people in it. And everyone was itching to get their hands on it because of all of the crazy things that people were posting that they were able to do with it. And so I continued to work with it because of its how exciting it was that it was private. But then after working with it with enough time, I realized that the world is really not ready for it. And it's probably a bit dangerous. And so let me give you an example of how GPT-3 works. So what you do is you create a prompt, right? And you can tell it how to behave. So in this first example, it's saying, I'm a highly intelligent question answering bot. If you ask me a question that is rooted in truth, I will give you the answer. If you ask me a question that's nonsense, trickery, or has no clear answer, I will respond with unknown. So you can ask her a super simple question. Human life expectancy in the United States, 78 years, boom. But then let's say you wanted to parse unstructured data. And what this means is, say you had like a Harry Potter book and you wanted to find out all the times that Harry casted a certain spell on a certain character. Well, then you could ask it that and it would just read through it all and then return you a table with the data of all the times that had occurred. So this example is some made up planet, and it summarizes the fruits from this planet. This one is one of my favorites that I got it to do, which was doing something with a second grader, right? So you want to take something super complex that is hard to understand, and you summarize it so a second grader can understand it. And so I do this all the time. This is a contract that I've used a bunch of times. And so you put in some legal speak, and then it rephrases it for you. And if you read it at the bottom, it's fantastic what it's able to output for you, right? So I shared it with my friends, and we had something happen that really freaked us out, right? We were fascinated with the ability to really have conversations with the artificial intelligence, right? To make it conversational rather than it to solve certain tasks. So a friend of mine ended up trying this and asked it about how to get better at increasing his listenership to his music. And if you read this, it gives some examples to say, hey, you got to look at your aims, which is the per capita listenership in a certain location, and using national and international data, you can estimate the listenership of the band. But then as the conversation goes, if you look at the bottom, he says that he thought the band had been disbanded after the guitarist went to rehab. And my friend ran up to us and was wanting to throw up. He was so afraid because he really was like, this happened. I sent that over Facebook Messenger, and somehow it knows who I am. And so we had a whole debate and argument over whether this was coincidence or if it actually was intelligent to be able to give this response. We would like to hope that your Facebook messages are private, but the data set is trained on all of the internet. So let's just hope that that isn't true. I don't have the answer to whether this is coincidence or it's true, which is spooky. Another thing I might add, which I forgot to add, is their company is no longer a nonprofit. After they released this, they converted into a for-profit. So I think that's kind of spooky also, right? So I decided, okay, let's do something dangerous, but of course for research, right? And so what I did was I went on LinkedIn and I took a bunch of profiles and a bunch of companies, and then I had it classify each of those companies based off their industry or segment, right? So I could feed it a certain company in their description, and then boom, I get a classification. Well, this company is a chatbot, higher education, student engagement and retention, and so on. So I was able to classify all of these companies, and then I created a bot to automatically send a message to each of those companies based off of a thing that I wanted to sell, but particular needs that they might have that I can identify on their LinkedIn, right? And so what I was able to do was I'd give it its description, and then boom, it writes a message for me, right? And it looks very human. I can show you a lot of the messages that I've sent. And I decided, just for the irony, I'd send a message to a company that does personalized sales outreach as a service, and the CEO responded. I didn't even write that message. That is a computer that wrote that and sent it. So that's crazy, right? So another thing that I want to talk about and why this is a big deal is, while I was doing this research, I found this company. It's called Rephrase AI. And I think this is just completely unacceptable. So I'm going to play it. Hopefully you can hear the sound.
Simply select a model from the model selection panel. Enter a text and hit generate. And here she is.
Hi, I am Jane, and that was pretty quick, wasn't it? The world's first AI technology, which creates professional quality videos of real humans from just text. Follow along and check out the next generation of sales personalization.
Screw that, right? Like, are you kidding me? There's gonna be people reaching out to me that aren't even real, telling me, hey, Lucas. And no, I don't like that, right? That's just, I think that's stepping too far. And this is only the beginning of that, right? I'm sure you've kind of heard about deep fakes and voice cloning before. And the advancements in this field are like moving faster and faster. So I have some other examples because their technology is actually really not that good. I mean, I think they're really testing the idea. But if you look at some people that are really good at making deep fakes, I mean,
I can't believe you hit Derek. I know, did you see the expression on his face?
Like, that's amazing.
Cool.
right?
Do you want to see something super cool that only 3 people have ever seen in their lifetimes?
That's pretty hilarious. And then also a famous podcaster, they've cloned his voice.
Being a robot has its benefits. I can pronounce tongue twisters now. Check this out. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. How many pickled peppers did Peter Piper pick? She sells seashells on the seashore. The shells she sells are seashells, I'm sure. Also, since my brain is connected to the internet, I've become a medical expert. Did you know that basilar membrane and otolaryngology are not autocorrelations?
All right, we get it. So that's pretty crazy that you can clone people's voice, right? And as time goes on, you need less and less data to be able to do that. You know, these are really good because they have a lot of pictures of their face, they have a lot of audio, but it's getting better and better. So we've kind of found ourselves in this situation where we can be reached out to people online or see things online. We can't really tell that it's real or not, right? Because, you know, before when there was fake information, it's kind of easy to identify that it wasn't real. But now it's getting harder and harder, right? And so there could be a lot of hypothetical situations you can think about, like maybe some relative calls you, says, I'm being held ransom, you need to send me money, please, you know, whatever. And then it sounds like them, they are talking to you like it's them. And so what do you do there, right? And we've already seen that like disinformation has like caused real problems, even with the older technology. So like in 2016, this one was always crazy to me, which was this pizza parlor in Washington, D.C., where some rumors started going around that there was a pedophile ring there. And so someone showed up with a gun, was like, Hillary Clinton, stop your sex slaves, and like got arrested, right? And that's crazy to me that, you know, people can end up believing these things. And you see it with 5G now, or, you know, anti-vax, or, you know, you can go on, you can probably name a ton of these different things that they're reality to people, right? And so it's going to get even more freaky. So how can we tell what is real and what is not? I couldn't really tell you, but I do have some ideas. So first thing is I would say that your personal information is extremely valuable. So privacy is really important, and it's time to demand it back, right? And so if you have information of you out there, it's hard to know what people are using it for. And I really think it's important that we start to be able to see that, and we can take control of it, right? So we can prevent people from using it against us. And then also I'd say that big tech and journalists, they need to be held accountable for verifying all distribution of information. And so, like I said earlier, how there's some models where you can detect there's a deep fake, or if there's some fake information. But if that's happening, these platforms need to implement that technology in their platforms. But right now there isn't anything to detect it. They're trying, but they don't try hard enough because it doesn't really, they're not incentivized to really stop it anyways. So we're on information overload. What information should we listen to? That's the last question I'll leave you with. Thank you. And if you ever want to reach out, please do. My company is always working on stuff like this. So if you ever want to try the model too, like I'd love to let you try it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas. Fantastic job. I think I speak for everyone here when that was, I mean, a ton of great information. I'm sure we all learned a lot from that. And for those who don't know, this brand new virtual format that we're holding, the way our kind of mini TED Talks are going to run, is I'll have the great honor to ask Lucas here a couple questions about his talk, which I know you don't get to do usually in a TED Talk format. And then also, I see we already have some questions here in the chat. We'll open up to all of you guys to ask Lucas any questions you have about him, his talk, or the great information that you guys just heard just now. So without further ado, Lucas, as a junior at Santa Clara, right? So very early into your career, and you have your own business, as you mentioned, OmniLaunch. How does someone like you get into the industry of AI? And maybe for the listeners out here, how can they learn more about this technology? Or for your kind of personal experience, how can you walk us through maybe the steps that you took to kind of learn about this entire crazy space of whatever AI is?
Yeah, I'd say there's like a assumption that you need to be like a PhD to be able to do artificial intelligence. And of course that will help if you're going to do research. And I'm not downplaying that at all. But if you want to just start to learn, I can suggest there's a course, fast.ai. And I just sent it into the chat. Also awesome messages in the chat, by the way. It's awesome. But yeah, it's really not too difficult to get started with some of that stuff. You just need about a couple months of programming and like Python beforehand. And you can start making like recommendation systems or image recognition systems. And but even if you're not going to be technical about it, it doesn't matter. This company, for example, OpenAI, they're trying to hire tons of people that are outside of, the computer science or artificial intelligence side of things, because these are like really big ethical questions. And so they need people that can talk about this and figure out how to proceed with this, right? And so actually, I think that side of things is the most important part, right? It's like, how do we actually use the technology for good?
Fantastic. And then that kind of takes me to my next question, Lucas. You mentioned using technology and AI for good. And as I heard you talk through your presentation, you mentioned a lot about data privacy, maybe how we can help protect or limit the power that AI has. How do you recommend that students that are like just in the Zoom call, what are steps that they can take themselves? Maybe I would say help limit the power of AI, or maybe help limit the power that AI has over their lives and over their data. What can we do now to help avoid maybe what's to come with AI?
Yeah, that's a hard one because everything wants your information, right? Because they just all make money off of that. But there's a new law in California, it's like CCPA, and then there's one in Europe, GDPR, which allows you to request that companies stop using your data, and you can even have them delete it. I'd say the other thing is there's lots of ways that you can stop things from tracking you. So you use like DuckDuckGo, or you like modify your browser so you get some extensions to block ads. I can send some if people are interested on how to like rename, kind of keep yourself anonymous online and things like that. But I'd say also it's just like it's almost out of your control right now. And I think that's something that we could start is thinking about like how can we start, I don't know, boycotting, protesting for some type of new way to take control of this. And there's some politicians that have talked about it, not many, but Andrew Yang had something where he was like, your data is yours, so you should be able to control it or whatever. But it's not something that's talked about a lot. And so I think that's the first step, because there's not too much you can do, and it's not very easy also. So
No, definitely not an easy problem to tackle, but definitely, Lucas, we can send a follow-up email to everyone who registered as well, and kind of give them some information and tips that you have and how we can help, I guess, solve or take the right first step with this problem. So one last question I have, Lucas, is what really inspired you to, give this talk, give this presentation? Like, what was the motivation behind it for you? Like, really, where does AI play a role in your life, do you think, going forward?
Yeah, I think in 2016 was when I first got interested in disinformation, because I remember being really freaked out about it in high school and telling a lot of people that there was something going on. And it wasn't just me who was saying that. There's a lot of people that were saying that there was some weird thing going on with disinformation. But at least in my local community, people didn't really listen to me about it. I was just kind of like being crazy. And then I think the world has just taken a really crazy turn in terms of how social media is like influencing people's worldview. And I think we have to have like we got to think about like how we're consuming content and what we're consuming and what we believe in and things like that. And it's just getting more and more complicated. And so I don't really have a complete answer to that question, I guess. It's more like I feel like there's not enough alarms blaring that this is the issue, right? And of course, there's a lot of other issues for why disinformation could be happening, but I think it's at least we should start thinking about it and talking about it more. And that's what I hope to do with this presentation.
Fantastic, Lucas. Thank you so much. And now what we would love to do, guys, is use the time for anyone to come on and ask Lucas questions directly. that you may have from the talk, that you may have about him. And I see that some people have put questions in the chat, so feel free to come off mute and ask your question. So Patrick, I see you're the first one here. If you would like to, feel free to come off mute.
Yeah, hello, Lucas. I'm Patrick, just a first year at SU. My question was, how do you believe that we could incentivize like positive AI, or to incentivize retailers or just companies in general to stop, like, I guess we wouldn't be able to stop them gathering information, but like to incentivize them to stop like deep fakes and stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. That just reminded me of a website that I found recently that talks about some steps that you could take. So I'll find it before the meeting's over and I'll send the link in here. But it also shows you a bunch of other examples of how companies are actually using your personal information to do things against you. And so when you read that, it blows your mind of all the different things. And yeah, I think also another like problem is a lot of these systems are being trained to behave in a way off of data that is biased. So that's like a whole nother issue in itself, that like we should be trying to hold these companies accountable for. So I'll find that that link and I'll send it in here. And I think that would be another really great way to like follow this up and start figuring out ways we can attack this now.
I have a question.
Yep.
What are some of the ways that AI can help us benefit society? And I know we talked a lot about the dangers of AI, but what's the positive potential out there?
Absolutely. I'd say that there's a lot of stuff in the medical industry where they're using images to be able to detect when people have a certain disease that's onsetting. Or now there was one, supposedly I heard somebody in my house was talking about how you can cough into your microphone and it can tell you if you have COVID. And so I think there's a lot of potential for artificial intelligence to be able to see things in a lot of data that like we can't see. And so that could be used for bad, or that could be used for good. And so I can't give a lot of examples off the top of my head, but those are at least some. Self-driving cars, right? So no more traffic, or just still traffic, but less painful to be in California traffic. That's one pro.
I know that JD, you put a question in the chat as well. If you want to come off mute and ask your question, JD, that'd be great.
Yeah, Lucas, I was just wondering, like, I know you've kind of talked about this before, but is there any way that you can just press one button? Like, do I need an advanced law degree to block all of this information that's being tracked on me? Is there any way I could just download an app and like press one button and block it all?
You got a great business idea right there, JD. I think you should pursue that. I've seen something similar to that. It's called like do not pay, but it's not for data privacy, but it's like some way to like use a robot to sue companies. So like if you get a certain ticket, you can look up that ticket on there and it will automatically do something to try to sue the company, or not sue, but like stop that charge from being incurred. So you could definitely create something to do that. But I don't know if there's anything like that that exists. That'd be super cool.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. The AI can do it. That's the $1 million question. Correct.
I don't want to hog this pilot, but I do have another question. Kind of in the self-driving car vein. Do you think that's like a viable option, I guess, within like the next 10 years? Because for it to work, you pretty much have to have everyone driving self-driving cars.
Yeah, you're totally right. I think it's only viable if we change the way that we currently drive, because the way that we drive right now is really good for humans. So seeing signs and stoplights is good for us and our senses, but I think we've seen that there's other types of hardware that we can make that can sense the world that is not familiar to us, but it works better. And so I think if we changed kind of the way that we're driving, then we can get it. But otherwise, it's gonna be a challenge.
I guess I'll ask another question. Do you think like the reCAPTCHA stuff like works? I know like they have a lot of driving stuff there that like, I mean, it's definitely geared towards self-driving cars. Do you think that's like a viable way to gather that kind of data, or do you think there's another way?
Oh, so you mean reCAPTCHA for training to be able to detect things? Yeah, okay. So for people who don't know what reCAPTCHA is, it's like that thing when you go on your browser and you're like, are you a computer or are you human? And then you have to like select all the things that are like a tree or something like that. Yeah, they do use that to train their own models. So you're like, it's called human in the loop. So you're basically like training it for them. I think, I don't know if that's widely used for what the self-driving car. I'm no expert in this, but there's software you should check out if you're really interested in this. There's a guy, what's his name? His company's called Comma AI. I think his name is George Holtz. He like live streams himself coding, but he basically is trying to create his own self-driving car system with his own hardware and just using your smartphone. And he thinks that he can get 50% of cars to be able to work on this with just a couple $1,000s, and you can rig your car to drive itself. And yeah, I've watched some of his live streams, and there's certain software that's kind of like industry standard now for training and it's like you create like artificial environments to be able to like detect it and stuff. But I don't know much about it. But yeah, check that guy out, and I think it will lead you in some direction.
Do you have anyone personally you look up to, maybe in the tech world, maybe not?
Someone I look up to, my parents. I look up to my parents. They're fantastic. Well, thank you everyone for coming. It was really fun. Reach out anytime. I'd love to continue the conversation.
Fantastic. Yeah, Lucas, looks like everyone had a chance to ask their questions. And again, Lucas, I mean, on behalf of everyone in here, you were amazing. And if anyone does have any questions that come up, please feel free to email us TEDx@su.edu or directly reach out to Lucas. But thanks everyone for coming to our first student speaker series. It was great to have all you guys in here. And just so you know, we'll be holding other virtual events throughout the fall quarter. So please tap in all those too. And Lucas, do you have any last words or like any one, I guess, action plan that you want to leave everyone with before we close up shop here?
Be wary, be cautious. No, I don't know. I don't have a good finishing line. Should have practiced that one.
No worries. Everything else was amazing. So thank you, Lucas. So thank you again, everyone, for coming out. Please stay tapped into all the things that we're having this fall quarter, and we'll definitely reach back to everyone who signed up with follow-ups from Lucas with good links or good tips or different ways that you can kind of help combat this AI wave that we have coming in. So thanks so much, guys. We appreciate it. Thank you, Lucas.
Thanks. See you, everybody.